This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Morning, everyone. So now we're holding in Chodesh Elul, and we're also at the beginning of the school year. And both of these two factors have something in common, and they're the beginning. Chodesh Elul, of course, is the month that we prepare for the entire year. And it's probably the first week of school here. And before you do something, even before you start doing it, you always have to prepare for what you're doing. In a certain respect, preparation is even more important than doing a mitzvah itself. I'll give you an example. We say that the first day of Sukkot is Rishon L'Cheshbon Avonos, which means the first opportunity we have to do an Avera after Rosh Hashanah and Aseres Yemei Tshuva and Yom Kippur and preparing for Sukkot is the first day of Sukkot. Sukkot is called Rishon L'Cheshbon Avonos, which the Medrash says it's the first time in the year you have a chance to do an Avera. So the Taz asks, what do you mean it's the first chance? Why can't you do an Avera in the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot? Because you're preparing to build the Sukkah and you're preparing to take the Daled Minim. So certainly you shouldn't be able to do an Avera on Sukkot when you're actually sitting in the Sukkah and shaking the Daled Minim. If preparing to do a mitzvah is going to stop you from doing an Avera, then actually doing the mitzvah should certainly stop you from doing an Avera. No, says the Avnei Nezer, no. Preparing to do a mitzvah is more encompassing, is more immersive, is going to occupy your neshama more than actually doing a mitzvah. In a certain respect, preparation is always more important than the mitzvah itself. So this is the time of the year we have to prepare ourselves for the rest of the year and for the rest of our school year. How do we prepare ourselves? Yaakov Avinu spent 22 years in the house of his father-in-law Lavan. And when he went there, he went all by himself. He wasn't married yet. He didn't have any children. And on his way back 22 years later, he has 4 wives. Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah. He has 11 children. And Esav finds out about it. And Esav's coming with 400 men to annihilate Yaakov Beis chas v'shalom. And the pasuk says at the end of Parsha Vayetze, and I tell you the truth, right now I cannot see a thing. I mamish can't see anything. They took me yesterday. I spoke in San Diego, so they took me somewhere. Vayeman Hashem ruach gedola, and a wind came and took my glasses, and they're now in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. So I think I'm speaking to a girls' school, but I mamish have no idea. I can't see. I have notes, it's not going to help me. So, Hashem should give siyata d'shmaya. But the last pasuk in Parshas Vayetze says, Vayihi ka'asher ra'am, and when Yaakov Avinu saw the place, Vayikro shmai machanoyim, he called the place Machanoyim. 2 camps. Says Rashi, what are the 2 camps? 2 camps of Malachi Asharis. What are the 2 camps of Malachi Asharis? One machane of Malachi Asharis from Chutz La'aretz that was escorting Yaakov Avinu from the house of Lavan to Eretz Yisrael, and another camp of Malachim from Eretz Yisrael that was coming to greet Yaakov Avinu. So Yaakov Avinu sees 2 camps of Malachim. You see, there are different kinds of Malachim. There are all kinds of Malachim, by the way. There are all kinds of Malachim. For example, the reason why we say Psukei D'Zimra in the morning, the Mishnah Berurah brings, it's from Sefer Matei Moshe and the Sharei Oira, that when you daven, you're sending something up to Shamayim, and in the airspace, they're Malachi Ashares. And the Malachi Ashares, if they don't like the tefillah, they're going to shoot the tefillah down. They're going to shoot a missile at the tefillah. So you got to cut down those malachim. So the Mishnah Berurah brings, you say Pesukei D'Zimra versus Psukim of pruning, of cutting them down. Different kinds of malachim. Some are, you have good malachim, bad malachim. In fact, Friday night, Minhag Yisrael, even though Chassam Sofer did not say Shalom Aleichem, But today everyone sings Shalom Aleichem. So there's a big hash on Shalom Aleichem. You start with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, how you doing, Malach? Come inside my house. And then imagine like here, I'm a guest, I'm from New York. So imagine you bring me into, Beis Yaakov of Los Angeles? Yeah. Oh, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Glatstein, and after 2 minutes, okay, please leave now. That would not be hospitality, especially Rabbi Berstein's my cousin, my wife's first cousin's wife's father, so we're very closely related, right? So it wouldn't be nice. At least give me a couple minutes here, over here. So here the Malachim come into our house. They say Shalom. We say Shalom Aleichem. They say Tzeischem l'Shalom. Please get lost as soon as you can. Well, what's going on over here? That's Achnas Asorchim. Welcome. Now, take a hike. So the Avnei Nezer says there are different kinds of Malachim. There are Malachim of weekday and there are Malachim of Shabbos. So Shalom Aleichem to the Shabbos Malachim. Tzeischem l'Shalom to the weekday Malachim. So too Rashi says there are different kinds of Malachim. There are Malachim of Chutz La'aretz and there are Malachim of Eretz Yisrael. So Yaakov Avinu is being accompanied by the Malachim of Chutz La'aretz, and then the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael are coming out to greet Yaakov Avinu. That's Rashi. Comes the Ramban, and the Ramban asks one simple kasha on Rashi. Yaakov's going to Eretz Yisrael? Where's Yaakov located now? In the next Parsha, he forgot the Pachim Ketanim. So he crosses the river. Anyone remember the name of the river? Ma'avar Yaboik. Ma'avar Yaboik is before Amoin, which is before Moav, which is before Edom, which is nowhere near Eretz Yisrael. So how can Rashi say that Yaakov Avinu, as he's about to go to Eretz Yisrael, the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael are coming out to greet him, Yaakov Avinu is nowhere near Eretz Yisrael? That's Ramban's question. Comes the Maharal, and Gorari Maharal says a very important principle. The Maharal says that in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the eyes of the Torah, Hashem never judges a person by where they are. Hashem always judges a person where they're headed, where they're going. And Yaakov Avinu changed his direction, and he was headed toward Eretz Yisrael. And once you're headed somewhere, Be'enei Hashem, you're there. You're not where you are where you're going. And therefore Yaakov Avinu was going to Eretz Yisrael, it's like he's in Eretz Yisrael. And that's a very important limud. That's very important for us to know. Because when it comes to learning Torah, when it comes to Avodas Hashem, it's not about how much I know today. It's not about what my tefillah is today. It's not about what my Yiras Shamayim, my midas are today. It's what's my direction? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go? If a person says, yeah, I'm top of the class. I already know the teacher could teach the Chumash. I know it the best in the class. So I could really take it easy a little bit because I'm far ahead of anybody else anyway. So if you're headed down, then in the eyes of Hashem, you're already where you're headed. But even if you're the weakest in the class, but if you have a Ratzon, you want to improve your connection to Torah, you want to improve your midas, you want to elevate your Yiras Shamayim, even if you're not holding there yet, if that's where you want to go, if that's the direction you're taking, then you're there. Rebbe Shem doesn't judge a person where they are, but where they're headed. So in Slabodka, they would say as follows. Rabbi Berstein mentioned that he has a connection to Rav Henoch Leibowitz, Zechariah Bracha. I learned for many years in Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim. I learned by Rav Henoch Leibowitz, Zechariah Bracha, whose father, Rav David, was a Talmud of the Alter of Slabodka. Many of the yeshivas today are considered offshoots of Slabodka, be it Chaim Berlin, be it Ner Yisrael, even Lakewood. The Alter of Slabodka, you'd say the Chafetz Chaim would write Svarim, and the Alter's specialty was he was able to create Gedolei Yisrael. So the Alter of Slabodka had a very interesting and very powerful observation. What time in Los Angeles is Shkias HaChama these days? 7:08, something like that? Something like that, 7:08. Shkias HaChama, if you go outside, look outside, it's bright outside. It's day outside. It's just as bright as practically 1 p.m. And yet in halacha, Shkias HaChama, in certain regards, is considered Laila. Okay, the Mishnah Berurah recommends that somebody daven mincha before shkia, because according to many poskim, once sunset comes, it's already Laila. It's Laila, it's night. Why is it night? It's blazing hot outside. The sun is shining bright. And then there's something called Alois HaShachar. Alois HaShachar is dawn. Go outside in dawn. What does it look like? It's pitch black. You can't see someone in front of your nose. There could be somebody 2 amos in front of you. You don't know if it's white or if it's blue. You can't see a thing. And in halacha, it's yoim. And if you said halel, b'diavad your yotzei. And if you daven certain tefillos, b'diavad your yotzei. And if you took a lulav and esek, b'diavad your yotzei. I don't understand. Shkias hachama, it's day. No, in halacha, it's night. Alois hashachar, it looks like it's night. No, in halacha, it's day. Why would that be? Says the Alter of Slabodka, because in halacha, the Rebbeinu Shalom does not view something based on the way it looks now, but based on where it's headed. And if in the morning, even though it's black outside, it's dark outside, but it's going to become light, it's considered Yom. And if later in the afternoon, even though it's night outside, it's dark outside, it's light outside, but it's becoming dark and the sun is setting, it's considered night. So we're in the month of Elul now. We're in the beginning of the year. It doesn't matter what you got on your test. It doesn't matter where you're ranked. The question is, where are you headed? What do you want to be? What's your goal? What's your ambition? What's your desire? That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu views us. That's what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants from us in the beginning of something. We have to establish, where are we headed? What's our direction? In Megillas Esther, Esther tells Mordechai, okay, here's the plan. We're going to fast for 3 days. Gama ani v'naras hayotzim, we're going to fast for 3 days, and we're going to be mispalel, and hopefully our tefillah should be niskabel. And the pasuk says, Vayavar Mordechai, Mordechai crossed. So Gemara asks, what did he cross? Amar Shmuel, Orkuma Damaya, he crossed the stream. So Mordechai was in Shushan Abira, which is the capital part of Shushan, and he went into the bigger city, regular Shushan, and in order to do so, he took a step over a stream. Who cares? Who cares? Why is the Megillah reporting to us that Mordechai took a step over the stream? It's irrelevant. What matters to the Purim story that Mordechai stepped over the stream. This is the Kasha of Reb Shlomo Al-Kabetz, the Manos Halevi. Listen to what he says. Says Reb Shlomo Al-Kabetz, yeah, we care. It's very important. Because if there was no stream there, Mordechai would not have had to step over it. But now that there's a stream there, Hashem wants to show that every little, tiny, small, minuscule effort that Mordechai made to save Klal Yisrael is remembered, is important, is eternalized, is never forgotten, is chashuv b'einei Hashem. That's a very important limud. That every small thing we do, it makes a very big difference in the eyes of Hashem. Every machshava tova, every dibur tov, every hanhaga tova, nothing is lost, nothing is forgotten. There's no such thing. No, Hashem is only worried about big things, important things. Every little thing counts. Now I want to share with you an idea. I think the first part of it is pretty well known, but how it applies to us, I think, will be very powerful. We know there's a mitzvah of levaya. So if you have a guest, give the guest food, you give the guest a drink, and you escort the guest out of the house, preferably not after like the first 2 minutes. You let them stay a little bit, yeah? Achila shasiya levaya. How much you have to escort a guest? Minimum 4 amais. 4 amais. In fact, in last week's Parsha, Parsha Shoftim, we have the subject of the Egla Rufa. So if there's a dead body found in between 2 cities, so we're going to measure it to the closest city, and whichever city is the closest city, we're going to hold the Sanhedrin, the elders of that city, responsible for the dead body. And they're going to have to declare that it's not their fault. Why? Because look, we did whatever we needed to do. What was it that they needed to do? They're going to say, Yadeinu l'shavchos hadam. We escorted this body, we escorted this individual out of the city, so we're not responsible for any harm that happened to him. You see, there's a halacha that when someone comes to the city, the Zakenim need to escort them out of the city. How much? Also, Dalet Amais. And if they do escort him Dalet Amais, that would protect him, and if something happens to him, it's not their fault. But if they didn't escort the person, it's their fault that something happened to the person. So the Marsha. By the way, the Marsha was one of the most important commentaries on the Gemara. Chazon Ish writes in the first letter that it's painful that today, in those who learn Gemara and Tosfos, they jump to let's say, more contemporary Rosh Yeshiva without learning the Marsha. Marsha lived from, I believe, 1555 to 1613. A very interesting story. The Marsha's name was Reb Shmuel Edels. And Edels wasn't really his last name. Edels was his mother-in-law's name, Edel. Because she was a very wealthy woman, and she supported the Marsha for 2 years. So you see, look at the kayach of Isha Tzidkaniya. Look at her righteousness, that she is eternalized in the Shas because she supported Torah, and now Klal Yisrael has the Marsha because of the Marsha's mother-in-law. The Marsha asks, how does walking somebody 4 cubits protect them? Imagine, in New York, you have a neighborhood, Harlem. You know about Harlem? You shouldn't. It's not a good place to walk by yourself, especially at night. If you walk there by yourself at night, you ain't coming out. I'm sure there are some Mekayimos around here also. So imagine a guy, he said, okay, bye Sanhedrin, I'm going. Where are you going? I'm going to walk through East Jerusalem. I'm going to walk through Shechem. No, don't worry. You walk me Dalet Amos. And if you walk me Dalet Amos, I won't be harmed on the whole trip. I mean, Mashas, what is walking somebody Dalet Amos going to do? Fine, you walk them to, a few feet. Very nice. But then they have to travel through enemy terrorist territory. How is accompanying somebody 4 Amos going to protect somebody? Listen very carefully. Says the Marsha, if you walk someone Dalet Amos, what are you showing? You're showing you want to protect the person. So why don't you walk him the whole way? You have a life, you have a job. You can't spend 3 hours walking him home. But at least by walking him Dalet Amos, you're showing what? I want to protect the person. The Rebbeinu Shalom says you want to protect the person? You have a ratzain to protect the person? Ritzain Yereyav Ya'aseh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills the desire of those who fear Him. So because you showed that you want to protect the person, the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to fulfill that and protect the person. Wow. Think about it. Did the person do anything? He only did a very, very small thing. He walked Dalet Amos. But when you do a small act, and you do a small maisa, and you show the Rebbeinu Shalom what you want, the Rebbeinu says, you want to do that? Then I'm going to take you the rest of the way. I'm going to accomplish the whole thing. That has a very powerful and compelling impact in what happens in the world. So there's a big question. During Asar Simei Tshuva, there's an Indian that we take on certain chumros that we don't necessarily continue to observe the rest of the year. So during the week, we're not necessarily makbid on Pasakum. In New York, they have Arnold's bread. So it has a hechsher. Some people are makbid on Pas Yisrael the whole year. But it's not. It's a chumrah. Many people are not makbid the whole year. But during Asar Simei Tshuva, you're makbid on Pas Yisrael. The question is, what does that do? What does that accomplish? Imagine you saying, Hashem, okay, I'm going to be good now for 7 days. And after that, I have no plans on continuing it. So what kind of tshuva is that? What does that accomplish? Does that have any meaning? And there are a lot of things we do during Asar Simei Tshuva that We only take it on for Aseret Yimei Tshuva, and it's not. We're not trying to fool it. We're saying straight up, we have no plans on continuing it for the rest of the year. What's the purpose of that? What's the point of that? And I think a good analogy would be the Daled Amos of somebody accompanying their guest. They're saying, I can't walk you all the way there. I can't accompany you all the way. But what I could do is, I could do a small act to show you what my Ratzain is. And when the Rebbeinu Shalom sees somebody doing something small, coming 1 minute earlier to the tefillah, being careful about Lashon Hara, 1 extra meal a week. It's not a matter of that meal or that minute. It's a maisa that you do to show the Rebbeinu Shalom what your Ratzain is. You know, when I was a bacher, I grew up in Flatbush. Flatbush is in a planet called New York. You know where New York is? It's part of the same galaxy as Los Angeles. And I lived on Avenue M and East 31st Street. And the Rebbeinu Shalom put a very good idea in my head. I used to walk as a bacher to Ocean Parkway, about 45 minutes, to hear Harav Avigdor Miller, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. That was a very big zechus. I had to hear him for 3 years. And there are many amazing things that I heard from Rav Miller. And Rav Miller used to talk about what Slobodka was like in the 1930s. Rav Miller used to talk about his Rabbeim in Slobodka, Rav Avram Grzinski, Rav Isaac Shar. And Rav Miller used to talk about the power of doing one small thing to demonstrate what your Ratzain is, to show what your Ratzain is. That when you do even one small act, then Rebbeinu Shalom says, okay, you're already a head taller than somebody else. And that makes a very big difference in terms of how a person is viewed. So, Ratzain has a very big effect. In fact, one time the Alter of Slobodka, and the Rav Miller would always say this, the Alter of Slobodka was once looking out the window, and he would always give people brachos. He would always say, have a good day, have a good morning, you should be matzliach. And one time, one of the Talmidim saw the Alter of Slobodka was looking out the window, and he was saying, Yankel, have a good day, have a good morning, you should be matzliach. And the bacher looked out the window, and Yankel wasn't there. And he was a little hesitant, he was a little shy. And he said, Rebbe, who are you talking to? So the Alter said, I'm talking to myself. Why are you talking to yourself? What, I should only tell Yankel that I have a Ratzain that you should be matzliach when he could hear me? Why shouldn't I have Ratzain all the time that my friend should be matzliach? Ratzain is very important. What you want is very important. So we're learning today is that even before you start your classes, and you start the shiurim, and you start learning, there are things that you need to do before anything. Number one, you have to know what direction you're headed in. Where am I headed? What do I want to be? What's my goal? I want to be a Bas Yisrael. I want to give nachas to Rebbeinu Shalom. I want to be someone who could continue on the Messiah of Klal Yisrael. That's the first thing you have to have in mind. And then after that, engender the Ratzain, the desire to learn, the desire to grow in Ruchnis, the desire to have Yiras Shamayim. And even if you do one small thing, you say, okay, this year, I'm going to try to write down something that inspired me. Every day, maybe even if I'm not writing everything down, I'm going to write down one extra thing. Or I'm going to say it over on Shabbos. Why? Just to show the Rebbeinu Shalom that this is what I really want. That will completely transform us. That will completely elevate us. And Be'ezras Hashem, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help, my humble bracha to all of the Talmidais is that you should have tremendous Hatzlacha in all of your endeavors. You should have a year of Gezint and Hatzlacha and success. Yimalei Hashem Kol Mishalois Libchen L'Toiva Agut Gezint Yar Ksivach Sima Toiva. Thank you very much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.